So to clean this thing up, we need to consider labeling, right? So on the subject of file management, you guys absolutely need to start paying attention to labels and titles and wireless connectors. It's all about identifying how to read your definition. And if you think about it, have any of you guys done any programming at all? Okay, well, your input variables, they're all set by the programmer as a common reference. So, and I haven't done a lot of programming, but basically your line will say, it'll have like an input call, and then you'll set the name of what that input becomes, right? So whenever somebody types in 5, right, then your reference can be input 5 or something like that. And then, or rather like an up arrow or something like that. Like whatever the keystroke is can be bound to an action or something like that. And then that particular name, whatever you call it, gets repeated throughout the actual code so that you begin to follow through where that input is going to be applied in various types of conditions. Okay, does that make a little bit of sense? Right. Well, anyway, what I am trying to get across, I think, is that you guys need to think about keywords. So when I look at this system, right, it's sort of a duplex system, right? There's a top system and there's a bottom system. That works well for us while it's a duplex system. It won't always be that, but it is now. So we can have a system A and we can have a system B. Okay? System A is the top left one, and system B is the bottom right one. Okay? That's how I'm going to call this. Secondarily, I'm going to use a different name for the endpoints and the midpoints. Okay, that's very important. And then I also need a separate name for the main arc, right? That's this ridge arc that's stretching across both systems. Okay, I'll need to define that as well. So when I look at that here, what I've generated with this was the bottom right point. So I'm going to call that, I said that was system B, right? I think I did. So I'm going to put in a point param, and I'm going to call that sysb base point. Sysb base point, and make that wireless.
Can you show me from what cell is that?
Yeah, that's kind of way back in the beginning here.
Okay.
Sysb base point. Okay, so anytime you see sysb base point, that's referring to this point right here. Okay? That's that one. So to keep it simple, I'll just leave that there for now. Likewise, I'm going to copy this and pull it down here. This one we created on system A, and it was the top point. That's up here. System A, top point. And make sure that you plug that in. Otherwise, it's still reading B. Now we also have this one right here, which was the midpoint. And so I'm going to use the syntax, or not syntax, I'm going to use the call sign AB point. I'm just going to call this AB point. Does that make sense? You guys need a sec? Yeah? No? All right. So our next step is to identify those midpoints, right? That's going to be very important for us. The midpoints are right here. Theoretically, we don't have to identify those. It's up to you if you do. I think for now I'm going to try not to until I absolutely have to, because I have already named them, and there are really only 4 of them in this case. So we also have the system here, which is generated or generating a set of curves. Okay, so this part can be simplified, I think, heavily. And I'm going to do it this way. So since this one is actually a cross-reference between the 2 systems, I want to stop that. I want to use one of them in either system and just make it a wireless connection, right? So to do that, I'm going to take this shatter component here. Let me ungroup that temporarily. I'm moving my shatter component back so that I can use a list item 0 and a list item 1, and that's going to get me both of my curves. Okay, so to do those 2 curves, those are I'm going to call them my ridge curves. Okay, so one of them is going to be system A ridge, the other one's going to be system B ridge. You guys understand the naming convention I'm using? No? I'll have to diagram it. Well, okay, let me pause and diagram it. All right, well, let me recap since I forgot to do that. I think where I left off was creating these. Is that where I left off? That is where I left off, yeah. Because I was explaining what system A ridge was and what system B ridge was. So anyway, what I've generated here is a wireless connector to start separating these systems so that we can visually understand the relationships a little bit easier. So system B ridge was one of the separated or shattered ridge lines that I used to create the truss. So that gets replaced up here with a wireless connector. Similarly, system A ridge, going down here to this system, is a wireless connector as well. So what we're doing with this is exactly that, but for all of the curve references. So that way when I have my diagram, and this is why the diagramming process for us is so important. When I have a diagram like that, I can create these little call signs and really understand when I'm looking at my definition what it is I'm creating. So we have up here our system B base point, our system A top point, and our A B points. Okay, these are going to be replaced in certain connections as well. So this one right here is our system B base point. That's the one that's at the bottom right corner, right here. Okay, so I take this and I just go to wherever that's plugged in the alternate systems. So system B base point is going to replace this one. And if you go back here, it's also going to replace this one right there. So I'll plug this in here as well. Okay, one step closer. You're giggling because you're lost?
Yeah.
All right, well, when I clean it up, you're really going to understand. Okay, so don't worry about being lost right now. Once I'm done, you'll get it. So I'm going to jump back here, guys, and move a little bit faster. Yeah, sorry. But anyway, so system A is the top left corner, so I'm going to replace those connections as well. That's going to be the same thing on the alternate system. That's down here. So I replace this connection, and I replace that connection. So it's the same thing that you see up here. System B base point goes into D1, D1. System A base point goes into D1, D1. Okay? So now, I have this little weirdo right here.
I'm lost.
Yeah, I know. You guys are probably going to be lost until I clean it up. Don't worry.
I'm still lost.
Okay? So I have that little weirdo right there, which is creating the ridge connections. That's a little different than the rest of the system. But I have my system system B, which is all the base right here. I just need to replace a few more connections. And then I have my system A, which is at the top, which also needs a couple more connections replaced. So let's finish it off. Looking back here, we have the right arc center point. That one I said I'm going to leave. But I also have the AB point. That's this one right here, the base point in the center. So I can move this over and follow where that connection is being made. Okay, so this is being connected to D2 and D3. Or I'm sorry, D3 and D3. So I'll plug D3 in and D3. And then I can copy that and do the same thing down on this system. D3 and D3. Okay. So now only two remain. Are you starting to get it, Yvonne?
Yeah, because now that it's connected, yeah.
Told you,
Not really.
right? It makes a lot more sense once you start to clean it up.
Well, you clean it up, but like...
Clean it up too fast.
Well, no, don't worry. I'm doing this in the interest of when you go back and watch the video again. You're going to be thankful for it. But once we get to the end here, you're really going to understand. So there's one more thing that I need to clean up, and it's just these arc center points. Do you want to make them, do you want to actually make wireless connectors for it? You may or may not. Just for your sake, so it's very, very clear what's happening, I'm going to make them. So these are points, and so I'll grab a point here, and this is going to be the right arc CP, but this is for system B. Yeah, that's system B. And then this is the left arc center point. So we'll copy, paste, make them wireless. I do this exhaustively, guys. All the time.
What's like the biggest definition you ever done?
Probably, let's see, like 10 times as much as this. I don't get a chance to do really intense ones because I only teach beginners classes. So anyway, this replaces that, and so now we have a complete diagram, right? This is a totally isolated system, and what's cool is I can look at these references, see that, and understand via my diagram what this is doing. Okay, so let's take a look at it critically. We have our system B ridge, which is the arc, right? The singular arc for the triangular truss. And then we have the system B base point, which is one of our endpoints. Then we have the AB point, which is the center point of the two systems, meaning it's the opposite endpoint of this subsystem. You guys get that? It's this and this. Here and here. That's a complete subsystem. And then from that, we're referencing the right arc center point and the left arc center point. That's this and that in order to generate the two other curves that we're creating our triangles from. Helpful? Even if you're still a little confused about it, you can somewhat conceptualize in your mind what it looks like with the diagram? Okay. So last thing, I just need to do the same relationship down here, and then we'll be done. I know I hear you guys sighing. So this is system A, right arc center point, and this is system A, left arc center point. Make them wireless. There. All right. So now what's cool about that is I can isolate them into a particular region. You won't have to worry about all these wires. This one is actually on top. That's system A. And that one's actually below. That's system B. So I'll choose to look at it this way. So if I ever need to reference these, I just go back through my definition and look at what titles are being output. and then I can go back over here and I can understand how they're being referenced together. All right? So that's how you clean it up. Yeah?
Yeah.
You guys are looking at me like I just ruined your week.
Can we have the video now so we can?
All right. So I'll help you guys get caught up before we move on.